Welcome in, fans, to another episode of the Two Line Pass podcast. I'm Randon, here with me, Dustin and Ryan, and we welcome back the whiteboard. Status back. Dustin, welcome in, my man. How are you feeling tonight? How's that whiteboard treating you?
It's very good. I finally got in the mood to erase what I had on there and move it from here to there. I was too lazy to do that, so it's been missing for a couple of days, a couple of pods, but it's back in all of its glory, paying homage to our good friend Zach.
Hey, you know what? Just like the team getting healthy, the podcast is now fully healthy with everybody in the lineup. Ryan, welcome in tonight. How are you feeling, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good, excited for the episode tonight.
Excited for the episode, excited for the upcoming games. Guys, when we last left you, we were about to start a series of games that was extremely important as we chase that final wild card spot. We were, 6 points out, 5, 6 points out to start the weekend, and we played LA, Vancouver, and Chicago. Now, we went into the Los Angeles Kings building where they are a lights-out team. We got our very first hat trick from Barrett Hayton, but ended up falling. And then we end up playing Vancouver at home. This was the big one. We absolutely had to have it, and we did. We got those 2 points, essentially a 4-point swing, taking 2 points away from Vancouver. And then in a game where we really didn't feel like we could lose. The score is a lot closer than the game actually was, but Utah manages to take one from Chicago. So as it stands right now, at the time of this recording, the Utah Hockey Club is only 3 points back from the second wild card spot, which is exactly kind of where we wanted to be this late into February, fighting for our playoff lives. This is exciting, guys. This is exactly what we wanted to see out of this team, and playing meaningful games into March, into April. That was a success to us. Does it keep rolling? We're going to find out. Dustin, what are your thoughts over these last few games as Utah inches close to that second wild card spot?
Obviously, you went 2-1, so it technically could have gone better. But I don't think any of us had any delusions of going into LA's building and beating them on their home ice. They're just too damn good at home, like you said. But then the following game against Vancouver, not only did Utah need to win that game, they needed to win it in regulation. They couldn't let that one get into overtime and let Vancouver take a point out of that. They needed to win that game in regulation, and they stepped up big time. And then that game against Chicago, we were a little puckered until Lawson Krause decided to show up for the first time since October or November at home. But the sheriff decided to save the day. But yeah, that was a game where Utah, I think, clearly played better than Chicago, but just took a while for a puck to find the back of the net. So it was a little stressful, but they got the job done, and that's all that matters. 2 points is 2 points, no matter how you look at it. So I think that 3-game stretch since the last time we've been here went just about as well as we could have hoped for. So I'm all smiles, ear to ear right now. I'm happy with this team, and like you said, just meaningful hockey this late into the season is really cool.
Absolutely. Not you guys know me, and you fans out there, you know me. I'm the mayor of Negative Town, right? I am overly critical person, but I too am smiling ear to ear. I will say, you know what, the game reminded me against Chicago. It kind of reminded me of our game against Carolina, where Veggie just outright stole that game from Carolina all those many months ago. This is kind of, had Chicago won, that would have been the same thing. Like, where Chicago got outplayed thoroughly, but the score didn't indicate how thoroughly they got outplayed, and their goalie played lights out. But all the same, very exciting to watch. But Ryan, over those last 3 games, does anything stand out to you? What are your big takeaways going 2-1 on this stretch over the weekend?
I would say that the biggest thing would be having Dersey back. Kind of looking like the team of old. I didn't think one dude he made that much of a difference. And I was wrong. That man he's pretty good. And it's not that he goes out there and he does he's not Cale Makar, but he just plays really, really well. And he adds something to the team. Like the penalty they took yesterday where him and the one dude were literally just having their little conversation and they both kind of pushed each other. And the ref gave them each 2 minutes for unsport. Like, nobody on our team does shit like that. Nobody. Good. I'm glad Dersey does. You know what I mean? Like, it's nice to have somebody who's willing to take a dumb little penalty like that. But I think we're playing a lot better than we had been going into the Four Nations. Like, we've been looking kind of better. I mean, not kind of, a lot better. But I'm still worried going into the playoffs, into the race. It's not guaranteed good luck, but hey, if we make it, we make it. But we've been doing a lot better this week.
That is one thing I think that as a fan, trying to take a look at what my expectations were, right? And I think it's just so overcome with gratitude that we even have a team first and foremost, but not wanting to feel like, oh, well, the gift is even being able to watch it. Like, the expectations for this team, I truly and honestly felt at the beginning of the season that this was a playoff caliber team. Now, we all knew, I think from the very beginning, none of us had any illusions that we were going to be the first seed in the Central or the first seed in the Western Conference or anything. I think we all agreed that if they make the playoffs, they get in the 8th seed. That was it. But we all agreed that was a reasonable expectation. Like, this team and the moves they made in the offseason were good enough to do it. And so I'm trying to balance realistic expectations versus super hype. We're going to the Stanley Cup Finals. It's been fun having those conversations and seeing the positives and the negatives that have come with that. Obviously, we got Logan Cooley back as well. So Dersey comes back for a game, and then Logan Cooley makes his return against Vancouver. So now this is the first time, guys, since really the entire season that we can field a roster that truly feels like what this team was built to do. Now, that in between the moves, the injuries and everything, there's been a lot of ups and downs, a lot of movement. Josh Doan has absolutely blossomed into the player that we all hoped he was. Incredible speed, incredible pace, he plays the same way. Do you remember when we were talking about how much of a dog Logan Cooley was on the ice in terms of the tenacity that he played with? That's what Josh Doan is doing. I think Logan Cooley has matured into this, he's blossomed into this superstar where you just expect that, right? But at the beginning of the season, it was something that we were watching before our very eyes, and that's the same thing. We get to do it again with Josh Doan and that type of hustle that he's playing and bringing to the team. And then we got Marino was not back early in the season. So before Dersey goes back, John Marino was not in the lineup. And so our defensive core had never been intact the way it is now. So this is it. This is where these assuming, obviously, fingers crossed, knock on wood, all those monikers, as long as nothing else happens, this is what we get to see this team do, what we had hoped that we'd get to watch them do all season, that injuries really hampered. Now, there have been some other changes. Koleonchuk gets picked up. He's gone. He's in Pittsburgh. Hasn't started yet, to my knowledge, but happy trails to him. In a surprise, a move I did not see coming, Juuso Välimäki gets waived and sent to the minors and is not claimed, which is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. But I'm also oh man, I was much higher on Juuso Välimäki than I guess every other GM in the league was. And I'd just like to formally apologize to Bill Armstrong. You're right, I'm wrong. You're smart, I'm dumb. I criticized that move to waive him. I thought maybe we could get a draft pick or future considerations for him because I thought for sure that somebody was going to pick him up. But he's gone. Happy trails. We've got Nick DeSimone, who's blossomed into a defensive player. He's going to be riding the pine and the healthy scratch, but he's available when the time comes. What do we do with Bortuzzo when he gets healthy? Hopefully ship him away too, because DeSimone is better. But our defensive core is set with Marino and Dersey now being fully healthy. And then in the forwards, some unexpected things have happened in the forward lines. Matias Maccelli has been scratched 5 of the last 6 games. Right? We expected that he gets scratched 1 or 2, right? We wanted that fire to be lit under Matias Maccelli, but I am worried that he is not going to play a single game. And the beneficiary of that is Michael Carcone, who's playing on the second line, who was at best on the fourth line, where I thought he played the best was the fourth line, but he was even struggling to get playing time. He was a healthy scratch for a large portion of the first part of the season, and we would even argue, because it was Liam O'Brien and Michael Carcone were switching back and forth, and we're like, well, who's going to fill that role? And then they've both kind of played. So a lot of lineup moves, a lot of forward shifting. Bukestad's now on the fourth line. Krause hasn't played with Bukestad and Michelli in weeks. Like, the whole thing is really up in the air, but it's exciting because they're healthy, and Tourigny gets to play with those lines in a positive way, I'm hoping. Now, the one thing that is on everybody's mind about Tourigny and what he's doing, and it sucks that we even have to bring it up, but Vejmelka and Ingram, we still wonder, has Vejmelka finally done enough to get the definitive 4 starts to every one starting goaltender position? Ingram was in net against Los Angeles and lost. So Veggie plays on that back-to-back against Vancouver, gets the win. And Veggie starts on Tuesday against the Blackhawks, gets the win. And I've said it once and I'll say it again, Veggie gets the start on Thursday or we riot. Guys, do you still think there is a goalie controversy, or not even a controversy? Do you think Tourigny truly and honestly just is so believing that you have to have 2 and you must split? Like, are we finally with Veggie, or what? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here, guys.
No, I don't think you're crazy. I think he legitimately thinks that is how to win a Stanley Cup, or he thinks that's how it's going to win. And I don't know if that's how it works in the NHL, because I can't name a top 10 team who has this much of a goalie issue other than Carolina, just based off of Frederick or Anderson getting hurt as much as he does. It's kind of weird that he expects to win being the one team in the league where it's like, ooh, we're going to shuffle the goalie up. Like, really? It's not how it works, man. They're not like forwards. You know what I mean? Like, they don't like to be shuffled. Pick one and roll with it. It's not hard. Like, it's really not.
You know, I thought about this a lot today because to me, and it seems obvious to everybody else, Vejmelka is by far, well, maybe not by far, but Vejmelka is noticeably better than Ingram. Like, you look at some of the top performances by goalies this season, and you think of like Vejmelka in the Carolina game that you talked about, where he just went out there and took that game from them. And Vejmelka's had, I believe, 2 shutouts so far this season, or is it just 1? He's had 1, but he's had a lot of really, really good performances. You look at the top like 5 performances of goalies this season on Utah's roster, and like the top 3 are probably Vejmelka, and then 4th is maybe Stauber. And like I don't think Ingram has turned in a performance at all this season where you look at that and you're like, wow, like Ingram was just on tonight. Ingram was on. Ingram was the man. Ingram was unstoppable. Ingram was a brick wall tonight. Like, you haven't seen that type of performance from Ingram at all this season, and we've seen it multiple times from Vejmelka. And the only thing that I can imagine is just maybe Vejmelka is just one of those athletes who performs better when the spotlight is on, performs better when the lights are bright. So, like, in practice, maybe Ingram is just noticeably better. And Tourigny has said before that he gets feedback from the goalie coach, and maybe it's just Ingram is that much better when they're practicing. So, like, okay, Ingram has showed us something in practice, and then when the lights come on, he just slides back a little bit, and Vejmelka is one of those performers that just, the lights come on, and they just step their game up. In every sport across the board, there are guys like that just, when the pressure is on, when the lights are brightest, that's when they're at their best. And that's all I can imagine, is just maybe they're seeing something in practice that we're just not seeing, but we're far enough into the season where you need to look at what they're doing in the actual games that they're playing. Like, Vejmelka has shown over and over the season, he's the better of the two. So, like, I'm hoping that these last 2 games have just, maybe Tourigny finally sees it. He says, okay, we got to run with Vejmelka. Like, we need to make him our guy and give him 3, 4, 5, not 3, 4 or 5 starts for every one for Ingram. Like, I'm still holding out hope, but I don't have a lot, and I can't explain it other than maybe he's seeing something in practice that we don't have access to see. But other than that, I don't understand it.
No, and all that speculation is leading to trade talk and trade rumor about whether or not Veggie, who is going to be an unrestricted free agent in the offseason, whether or not he is on the trade block. Now, I kind of want him to get traded, not because I want to lose him, but because I would like him to go to a team where he can actually play and continue to play well and grow and develop. Now, you listen to some of the Arizona fans, and they're kind of flip-flopped, right? So they see the same, where we see Veggie as the undisputed starter and Ingram as the backup because of the way they've played this season. The exact opposite was true last season, where they felt Ingram earned the starting role, and Vejmelka never quite lived up to his hype. But Ingram still started 50 plus games. I think he started 53 games last season. And that's pretty respectable. That's what we'd kind of hope. 55 games, like the days of 60, 70 plus starts for anybody who's not named Connor Hellebuyck, that's over, right? That's over. But you still can't do every other game. For at least Veggie, who is a player who has gone on record as saying that he wants to start every game. And I think he personally grows and builds and has momentum as a person that he can't get when he's constantly put in. Even if you've established up front with them that this is how it's going to work, that cannot feel good. It can't feel good for Ingram, and it can't feel good for Veggie to constantly feel like you're not doing well enough, or if you slip up even a little bit, you're going to get yanked. It's just not, in my opinion, not a way that you should coach goalies. But again, maybe there is something that the goalie coaches see. But if he is, and Tourigny can't make his mind up, go find somebody that allows you to. Because if Frable's as good as everybody hopes he is Tourigny just going to screw him up too? I have been very critical of Tourigny all season. I've criticized him for not developing young defensemen. I worry when Maverick Lamoureux and Shimashev come. Is Tourigny capable of coaching them? Because he tried with Maverick and it didn't work. Whether they brought him in too early, we could argue about that, but he's now getting meaningful minutes in the AHL, developing by some other coach. Tourigny has nothing to do with Maverick Lamoureux's development at this point. And when Maverick Lamoureux comes up, same thing kind of with Josh Doan. Josh Doan was incredible after his stint with the AHL. But Tourigny wasn't down there coaching him in the AHL. He was being developed at the AHL level. And I think his desire to play elevated his game. So we'll see. They say Tourigny's this development coach. He's a development coach. Well, eventually, though, the rebuild can't last forever. And you have to shift from a development coach to a winning coach, not just an incremental improving coach. And is Tourigny capable of making that switch? I don't think so, because I don't really see the development that everybody else sees. I see him getting lucky with superstars that are blossoming into superstars, and I'm not so sure that Tourigny is the reason for it. But that's just me. I'm not at the practices yet. I live quite far away, but one day, when they build that super sweet new practice facility right down the road from my buddy's Dustin's house, I'm bunking with you, Dustin. I'm going to move my stuff. We're going to wrestle. We're going to be buddies. We're going to be pals. And we're going to go to those practices. But then we might be able to see these things. Because the beat writers, they don't really talk about necessarily what is going on in practice, other than they talk about the practice lines, and they talk about who comes off the ice first, and that's how they signal which goalie is going to get the start. But they're not talking about in terms of skill drills, who's looking good, who's looking bad, what they're doing. That kind of information is not being necessarily broadcast. So will we be able to? Maybe it's a closed practice. Maybe you can't, maybe they aren't allowed to leak that information, Maybe we don't want to be like that guy from Michigan. We're going to sell the tapes to the opponents, But but it is interesting. It is interesting to see how it all goes. But yeah, we'll see what Veggie happens to him, if he gets traded or not. But we'll see. Before we move on to talking about trading, is there anything you guys want to talk about from the last 3 games, from what we've seen from this team, the lineup changes, the goalie changes, or anything as we move to talking about the future?
I'm good on the last 3 games, but if you'll entertain me for a minute, I did some prep before we get into like all the trade speculation and whatnot. If Utah's going to make the wild card, if they're going to make that final wild card spot, actually make the playoffs, I want to start, as we're coming down to the last like 20-25 games of the season, just sort of like build a roadmap of what we need to do and what I expect the other teams around us in the same fight to do. So if you'll entertain me for a couple of minutes, I'm going to kind of cover the next 5 games for Utah, Vancouver, and Calgary, because those are probably going to be the 3 teams that are fighting for that last spot. Like, St. Louis is right on our heels. I believe they're only 1 point back of us right now. Like, their next 4 or 5 games are Washington, the Kings, Dallas, the Kings, and Anaheim. Like, there's a decent chance that St. Louis just kind of slides back out of this thing. So I'll just cover the next 5 games just to kind of give a picture of where we need to be, where we could be at that point. Calgary, I'll start with them because right now they're in that second wildcard spot. They're the ones, if the season ended now, they'd be in the playoffs. So they just kicked off a 6-game road trip. They actually beat Washington on the road 3-1, but they have 5 more games on the road coming up. They go to Tampa, to Florida, to Carolina, to Philadelphia, and to Dallas. Like, that's a brutal stretch of games right there. The most winnable of those 5 is probably Philadelphia. That's their 3rd game in 4 nights. So there's going to be some tired legs there. They're like they could go conceivably 0-5 through that stretch, because that is a very tough stretch right now. But let's just say, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say they go 1-3-1 during that 5-game stretch. So they're sitting at 67 points, okay? Vancouver, sadly, they probably have the easiest stretch in the next 5 games. They've got Los Angeles, at Anaheim, at Seattle, home versus Anaheim, and home versus Minnesota. Like, those middle 3 games, Anaheim, Seattle, Anaheim, those are easy. So the Kings and Minnesota, those are going to be tough games. But let's say they go 3-2 out of there, okay? That puts them at 69 points. Right now, Utah's at 61. So over the next 5 games, they need to find 6 or more points to pull even with Calgary or pass Calgary, if they can find more than 6 points. And if they can somehow miraculously pull 8 points out of this and wind up tied with Vancouver for that second wildcard spot, like, there's a decent chance that Utah's right there just on the outside looking in. And really, all we need to do, and I'll touch on Utah's next 5 games. They've got Minnesota, New Jersey, Detroit, Chicago, and Toronto. Those aren't easy games. Those middle 3 are probably the most winnable. I'll be in the stands for the New Jersey game, so they're probably going to win that one. But Detroit and Chicago, those are winnable games. Toronto will be tough, and then on the 27th, tomorrow as we're recording, Minnesota is a good team. Has played them very well so far this year. They're 2-0-1. Like, they've beat them twice, and then the one loss was a shootout loss. So Utah knows how to play against Minnesota. So if they can somehow pull 6 or 7 points out of this, they're going to be right in the thick of it. And as we look too far ahead, I'm going to look too far ahead right now. But all we need to do is sort of keep pace with Vancouver down the stretch. We just need to keep pace with them. Because you look at their last 5 games as they close out the season, as this is going into like the last push for that wild card spot. They close with Dallas, Colorado, Minnesota, San Jose, and Vegas. Like, 4 out of those 5 are really, really tough. Utah, on the other hand, they close with Seattle, Nashville, Dallas, Nashville, St. Louis. Much easier 5-game stretch right there for Utah. So if you just keep pace with Vancouver, that's all we need. Just keep pace with them. Utah can probably sneak in there late. So just in the next 5 games, find 6 or 7 points, pass up Calgary, and just be right there neck and neck with Vancouver. That's what we need in the next 5 games. 6 or more points, and we're going to catch Calgary and be nipping at the hills of Vancouver. And that's exactly what we need. 6 points in the next 5 games. Find a way to do it, Torigny.
That was incredible, Dustin. That was awesome. That's the kind of hard-hitting information that you get from the Two Line Pass podcast. Dustin, my man. Now, again, I've been saying this for the last few games. Playoff teams, too. These next 5 for Utah, we're playing playoff teams, with the exception of Chicago, right? Minnesota, New Jersey, Detroit, Toronto, playoff teams. And it's going to show us what we all want to know is, can Utah hang tough and beat these playoff teams? It's going to be amazing to watch, and I'm excited. I was negative. I took a turn to negative town. I was really down on myself. I figured if we lost against Chicago, that was it. Send it in, pack it up, and let's start talking about draft picks, because we were done for. But this is exciting, and I think even if we are technically out of it, that it's unrealistic that we catch Vancouver or Calgary if they start to pull away, it'll still be technically not, until we are mathematically eliminated, which probably won't happen until maybe 75, 76 games, unless, the worst case scenario happens for us, which I don't see. But if we get mathematically eliminated, that's when I'll know. Up until then, we've still got hope. We've still got excitement to look forward to. Now, Ryan, as you look at the schedule, do you think Dustin's prediction of 6 points is capable? Can we do it in these next 5?
Can we do it? Yeah, absolutely. But every time we ask that, can we do it, we don't. And just, I don't know. I think it's doable. I'll be at the game tomorrow against Minnesota. So it's not necessarily a good thing. We've lost the only other game I've been to when I was there. So not a great, fortune, but yeah, I think we can do it, because Vancouver, I think, is falling apart at the seams the later and later we get into the season, especially with Quinn Hughes being out. So they're just going to keep slipping. And now that we have everybody back, I think we're just going to keep getting better. So, yeah, I think we can take 6 out of 7 pretty easily.
It's incredible how bad Vancouver is when Quinn Hughes is not in the lineup. I did not realize they were truly as bad as they are. It is a night and day.
They're absolute fugazis. Absolute fugazis.
Yep, they might as well call themselves the Vancouver Hugheses.
Vancouver, as we speak, on the road against Los Angeles, has a 1-0 lead at the end of 1. I know that's going to be hard-hitting news to everybody listening to this pod the day after, when the game's already been final for many hours. But as of right now, they're beating the Kings on the Kings' home ice, and that sucks.
Well, speaking of the Kings' home ice, I do want to say that who had it on their bingo card that Barrett Hayton was going to be the first hat trick in Utah Hockey Club history? Because I didn't. I absolutely did not. But man, there's another guy who is really stepping up, and since being replaced by Logan Cooley on the first line, I feel like Barrett Hayton is playing his best hockey when he is not on that first line. Now, he got first line power play minutes when Cooley was out, because Alex Kerfoot became the first line center. I love Alex Kerfoot, but he's not a first line center. But Barrett Hayton started to get the first line power play minutes. Now, that worked out not so much in the Chicago game, but it did work out previous to that. So we'll see. I suspect that Logan Cooley will make an appearance back on the first unit power play. But Barrett Hayton made the absolute most of his time on the ice with the best of the best. And Utah continues to be outstanding when Dylan Guenther scores. They are now still 13-0-1 now when he scores.
14-0-1. 14-0-1.
Absolutely incredible. So many more goals. Guenther, can you please score some goals? We see Nick Schmaltz feeding the rock, or the puck rather. I don't think they call it the rock. Feed me the rock is in the basketballs. But listen, I kind of said it off stream that I think they should pair up Schmaltz and Guenther a little bit more. And when we sign Mitch Marner in the offseason and Mitch Marner becomes our starting right winger, that's when you move Schmaltz down to the second line. You move Dylan Gunther to the left wing, where most of his one-timers come from that side of the ice anyway, so it seems like a natural fit. You plop Barrett Hayton between them, and my friends, that line is going to be the best line with a Gunther and a Schmaltz on it in NHL history. I will make you that promise right now, that there will not be another line that is better that had a Gunther and a Schmaltz on it. Mark my words.
I'm going to be honest. That actually doesn't sound like a bad line. Schmaltz, Hayden, and Gunther with Cooley, Marner, and Keller up top. I can work with that top six. I can work with that top. It's not a bad top six. It's not bad. Like that can get you pretty good. You know what I mean? And we got a good D. Figure out the goalie situation. And this team, why don't they hire us?
I don't know, but we're out there. We're making them. And then remember what I said. I wanted to target Ryan Donato. He's my third line center. You reunite Kerfoot, Denland, and Carconi as our fourth line. The fourth line of greatness. How good was that line for so long until they broke it up?
It was the best fourth line in the NHL when it was.
Yeah. So if we can find a third line that doesn't suck, it's going to be centered with Donato, so you find the wingers for him. Guys, that's 4 lines that could take us into the playoffs. I'm telling you, you go all in on Mitch Marner. And here's what's going to happen. Mark my words on this one too, my friends. Mitch Marner is having one of his best seasons, I think. If you factor in him and his contribution at the Four Nations, this is arguably Mitch Marner's best season. Right? So, Toronto may not be as high or as low on him as they were in previous seasons until the playoffs. And then Mitch Marner has a tendency to disappear. And that same thing's going to happen. Toronto's going to be riding high on the hog into the playoffs, and they're going to choke it away, and they're not going to get past the first round. Everybody's going to blame Mitch Marner, and he's going to say, "Get me the F out of here." And that's when we scoop him up. And we say, "Welcome in, Mitch Marner." I buy his jersey, and boom, we make my top 2 lines of destiny a thing. That's my prediction.
I think the only way that gets even better is if we swoop in and Ryan Smith pulls out the friend card and signs John Cooper, the Tampa Bay coach, because he, I believe, is a free agent at the end of the year. You bring John Cooper and Mitch Marner in, and we have a Stanley Cup in 2 years. Calling it now.
Yep. I would love to see John Cooper coach this team.
Like Armstrong, Smith, everybody in charge, we have laid out the roadmap for you. This is exactly how you build a Stanley Cup winning team. We've told you, and we've said all along, we've said multiple times on this pod, that when we say it, the team does it, and it usually works out. Just do it again. Just do what the 2-line pass says, and we've got a Stanley Cup here.
The cap's going up anyways. Just, Ryan, we know you're a billionaire. Start throwing that wallet around. Be like the owner of the Mets. Just go out there and be like, yeah, just make it rain. Just throw $800 million at John Cooper and be like, welcome aboard, bitch.
You're throwing, what was it, $7 million to a high school kid to come play college basketball at BYU? You can do the same thing for your professional team. Just max it out. Just max out that salary cap. Bring as much talent as you can here. Throw the money into it. It's going to come back tenfold when you win a cup.
The only benefit to this not working is I've been looking around at the ticket prices in other areas of the NHL. Like you could go to a St. Louis game, you could go to Minnesota game. Great seats, $12. Great seats for $12. So, Ryan Smith, if you want to keep charging the criminal prices that are currently being charged by the Delta Center and SeatGeek, you bring John Cooper, you bring Mitch Marner, and you bring the playoffs and the Stanley Cup to Utah. But you got to spend it. Otherwise, those ticket prices, they're going to plummet. And I'm going to be the beneficiary because I'm just a poor boy and nobody loves me. Except for me. I love myself. Guys, I want to say one thing.
He's just a poor boy from a poor family.
We need to have a karaoke night with the podcast, guys.
I'm so down. So down.
So one thing I was thinking as I was having self-reflection, right? Like, I'm being super negative on Twitter, as I often am. I'm not getting the likes. I'm not getting the reposts. I'm not getting the follows. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's because I'm negative, right? Nobody likes to heart a negative post. So I'm starting to change my outlook, right? I'm trying to be positive. And I'm starting to listen. I was listening to Bill Armstrong. Bill Armstrong's been everywhere, by the way, right? He was on, they did the front row interview. He was on with, what is the Canadian guy, Pierre LeBrun, or however you say that Canucks name. He's been on everywhere. And he kind of says the same thing. And what I have decided is that 100% the playoffs are way more important to the fans than they are to this front office. This front office does not really care if we make the playoffs this year or not. They are not judging the success of this season by whether or not we make the playoffs, which is the traditional way we as the fans judge a season. Did we make the playoffs or not, and how do we perform in the playoffs? That is the traditional way you judge a sporting team. Bill Armstrong has said it from the beginning that he still firmly believes that this team is in the rebuilding process. And I think he firmly believes that the playoffs would be a delicious, sweet treat, but it is meaningless to him. He will not judge it. And for that reason, that is why I am doubling down on my prediction that we do nothing at the deadline. We are not buyers. We are not sellers. He doesn't do anything to change this team, and then he decides what he wants to do in free agency. And the biggest question mark to me is going to be if he re-signs Veggie, and if he does, how long is he going to do it for, or does he let Veggie walk? It's possible. I can see both outcomes, but I really don't think he's going to do anything. Guys, as we wind down this episode, do you see any moves? We're 9-10 days away from the trade deadline. Do we do anything, or do we just stand pat?
I think you're right. I've said for a while that they would treat like the return of Marino, the return of Dursey, and Cooley getting healthy, just this whole entire team getting healthy as their acquisitions. So yeah, I think they just completely stand pat. The only way I see him making a move is if they have been talking to Vejmelka and he's just saying like, no, I'm not happy here. I don't like how you guys have handled this rotation. I'm going to be leaving in the offseason. And if he's just honest and upfront about that, maybe they try to move him just to get something back. But that's the only way I see any moves being made by the trade deadline.
Ryan, you buying or selling at the trade deadline?
I don't think we're going to be completely dead. I think we make one of two moves. We either move on from Vejmelka and break all of the fans' hearts because we know he deserves better. I think we'll all just be disappointed in the team. Not in anybody, you know what I mean? It'll just be one of those, like, you guys mishandled this, and it's 100% on Turney if Vejmelka has to leave and walk. And two, Michelli's missed, what were you saying, 5 games? I don't know, he's a young guy. He's got some talent, got some trade market value, I would assume. Benching me for 5 straight games, coming up, 2 weeks out of the trade deadline? Clearly I'm not the guy you want. Get me out of here, you know what I mean? Plus, you got Josh Doan, who, like we've all been saying this entire podcast, has earned every second of ice time he has been given and has done zero to squander it away. Very few mistakes for such a young kid. He really does remind me a lot of his dad out there, and I can't wait to watch him blossom. And when a Ginless kid comes up and the two of them can blossom together to be the new Doan and a Ginless, it's going to be beautiful. But yeah, I would say we're going to move on from one of the two of them. We're not going to be active in the trade market because, honestly, the people we want to get rid of have killed their own trade value. So, kind of us on that one. But, yeah, I think we'll do 1 or 2 moves. Other than that, we'll kind of call it a good time.
Hey, I could see them moving, and I don't know that we bring in too many pieces in terms of, like, we're not going to be the ones that are just missing that one final piece to make a deep run. We're just looking to make it. We're just looking into the playoffs. So I don't know. Other than a few pieces, I don't know if anybody gets us over that hump truly and honestly that we want to bring in. But we've got cap space, so let's see if he uses it this year, or certainly look for us to make moves in the offseason because there's a lot of decisions that need to be made. A lot of decisions. Kerfoot Bugstad, Carconi, a lot of guys, Ian Cole, I believe, not John Marino, but Olimata is I think he only has one more year as well. So a lot of decisions to be made, and we'll see what they do. But guys, we've got some exciting hockey. And we are going to be joining you next week after we've got the 2 games. Then we'll join you, and then we'll see the back-to-back on the 6th and 7th of March. But we'll see. We'll see how Dustin's roadmap goes, and if the team follows the roadmap, you follow that road, and you are going to win. Can they beat Minnesota? Can they beat New Jersey? We're going to find out, and we're going to be there with you every step of the way. Dustin, Ryan, any closing thoughts before we end this evening?
Go Utah. That's my thought. Just go get 7 or 8 points. I want to be tied with Vancouver at the end of this one. Looking at how they're playing against the Kings right now, we might be a little bit more back than that, but just follow the roadmap. It'll work out.
Final thought is tomorrow, Barrett Hayden, 2 more points, if not 2 goals.
There we go. They see him rolling.
God.
They hating.
I forgot. I forgot. I was gonna ask. Like, my head hurts a little bit because I've got this hat on. Do you know how much this thing weighs? A hay ton.
Okay. All right. That's the end of this episode, guys. With that great, phenomenal pun. Oh, that's high quality. That's high quality comedy.
That was
right
awful,
there.
man.
Somebody
oh my God.
man. Get this man a Netflix special. Thanks so much for joining me tonight. Friends, thanks so much for listening. Go Utah Hockey Club. Let's get some wins. Let's follow the yellow brick road to the playoffs. As always, stay safe and have a great night.